Let's jump to this story, though, from the AP. U.S. soccer equalizes pay in milestone with women and men. They say the U.S. Soccer Federation reached a milestone agreement to pay its men and women teams equally, making the American national governing body the first in the sport to promise both sexes matching money.
Oh, boy.
So this is why I think this is crazy.
Lydia.
They have different pay structures. They're different leagues. It would be like, imagine if Burger King announced that they were going to be paying McDonald's employees the same rates.
So my question is...
Are they bringing the men up or the women down?
They're-
Or the reverse?
Well-
They cut the men's salaries.
Yeah, it's just like, yeah, all right, we're
But
cutting
so
funds.
are they taking funds that were generated by the men's division and giving them to the women's division? Because the women's division can't make enough to pay them what they pay the men.
Yes, I think that's what it is. So it says, U.S. women and men's team agree historic deal to share World Cup prize money. So
that is very insulting to the
they
people
will
who are
share?
generating
yeah,
that
look at
revenue.
this. So I think the AP was wrong. What the story is, at least from The Guardian, is that they're going to share each other's prize money with each other.
So are they saying that the women should be dependent upon men's money? I find that interesting.
So the men are going to be giving
Are men
up...
providers?
I guess
Yes.
so.
Apparently.
The men are going to give up a large, millions upon millions, and the female athletes are going to give up hundreds of thousands. Is that what's
So
going to happen?
why would men play for the U.S. team? Why wouldn't they just go play in Europe and make a lot of money and not play on the national team at all?
The interesting part about this is that the men's team is actually trash relative to other men's soccer teams, and our female soccer team is one of the best in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Right,
But our
but
men's
still
is
men's
bad.
soccer
Makes
generates
more money.
more
Yeah,
money.
yeah,
Exactly.
But it's number one, so if we're America first right now, then we should be rooting for our women's team. I mean,
Yeah,
But it's
root for them,
also-
but they're still generating less money, so why should they get more?
yeah, we should support them too. We should buy. What was her
I mean,
name?
if
The one
people
with the
wanna
purple
support
hair?
it, they
Rapinoe.
can,
You can
right?
buy a
Those
Where's
jersey-
your Rapinoe
I'm not gonna
jersey,
buy a
Elad?
Rapinoe
Like, where is
jersey.
it? Let's see it. Why aren't you dyeing your hair purple just to get like Megan Rapinoe?
I did
These
go to the
activists
parade
can
when they
watch.
won, though, in New York City.
Well,
There
that's
was
what
a
I gonna say.
parade.
Yeah, when they won a few years ago.
The people who
I
want to
didn't even know they
support
did a parade.
the people who want to support the women's team, like, they can watch. People can get invested in this without having to take from the men's team. And it's funny because you mentioned the men's team is not that good. I don't follow sports, but I've heard that. But it's not as if anyone's saying, well, we should be giving the trophies that the women win to the men's team because we just like men more. What we're saying
You
is
should only
if
do
a
that if
group
the
of
men
people
are
earn
wearing
a certain
dresses.
amount of money, they should get that amount of money. And if a group of people earns less than that, you don't redistribute it to make them feel better.
Well, it's a
you-
socialist
It's like,
soccer
especially
team,
when they're making
right?
money playing sports. They have a
You
dream
do.
job. They're an athlete.
You do when you're a communist.
Yeah,
Right,
exactly.
it's a socialist soccer team.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's funny. It's
which
like,
makes sense because it is a European sport, right?
No one's-
And South
no one-
American.
I love when the blue checkies journalists were like, the women actually win and the men don't, but the men are getting paid more money, and it's like the men negotiate a different pay structure. That was literally it.
Well, there's also different audiences.
There
and
were
it's-
bonuses or guarantees, and the women wanted guarantees, and the men wanted bonuses or something. So it's like the men got bonus money and made money, and the women didn't or something. But also, yeah, it's just like, imagine someone working at McDonald's, and they're like, this McDonald's makes $1 million per month, and then across the street is a Burger King that's only making like $500,000 per month. So the Burger King employees get angry and go on strike and say it's not fair that McDonald's employees get paid more than us. It's like, you're different businesses. I get you both sell cheeseburgers, but you're different businesses. So then they agree to share their salaries. Like, okay, sure, I guess.
So yeah, that doesn't make any sense at all either.
So if the men win, they have to give money to the women or something?
I think they're going to be less incentivized to win. You're not making as much money.
I think they're
the
just
men's
gonna be-
team's going to do even worse.
Less incentivized to play on this team.
So wait, hold on. Well, you said the men's team is really bad. So does that mean the men aren't going to win and aren't going to make money, and so the women's team isn't going to end up making this money from the men anyway?
I think it's more people
MRAs.
just care.
The people supporting the women here, they're men's rights activists who think
Well,
men
what if
should
we
be
got-
getting alimony.
What if we got trans women to fill the women's league instead?
But they would have to. I guess we could, right? That's
Well,
a great
I'm
idea.
sorry. Are they trying to exclude trans women from their space?
So the issue that I had with the
The question is: are there any trans women on the women's soccer team? We don't even know that.
and if
They're
there
very
aren't,
well,
it's
maybe.
clearly bigotry.
Obviously.
True.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the argument from the left on this is, again, the Amazing Atheist tweeted at me that, tall people are better at basketball. We don't ban tall people. And it's like, okay, so then for what reason don't we just like seek out only trans women to play in the WNBA who are going to be taller, or in women's soccer who are on average going to be substantially taller and have more bone density and muscle mass? The point I was bringing up with the skateboarding thing is that people like to mention strength. It's like in swimming, your strength matters. Your strength and endurance matters. And but in skateboarding, it doesn't. In skateboarding, it is control, it is timing, and the advantage of having a higher center of gravity, of having narrower hips, no matter what you do or change, that's not going to have an impact. I'm wondering if in these skate contests, I don't think they have any hormone requirement like some sport leagues do, where it's like your testosterone has to be a certain level, because that wouldn't matter anyway. In which case, my point is, are we going to come to the point where if the argument is based on gender as a social construct and not sex, then someone who's literally a 6'6", 250-pound muscular male could just be like, I'm a woman, like Zuby, right? When Zuby did the deadlift and said he was a woman, why not?
That should be completely permissible.
Under their ideology, yes.
Yes.
In which case, the women's, I gotta say, why? How about for women's soccer, we should get a bunch of males? And I'm not saying this disparagingly or as a gotcha or anything.
It's a real question.
I think you're just being inclusive, Tim.
Well, no. But in all seriousness, if the goal of the team is to win money, the goal of the team is to win contests, we want the brand to succeed, and the coaches want the best team possible, then they should have open tryouts and just bring on the best possible people that there are. And if the team ends up being 90% trans women, we'll win more. Good, right?
I'm curious as to when we're going to see an actual big backlash from women on this actual issue as it becomes more common, because there aren't that many trans women in these sports yet. But as we continue to age, the youth, I think it's something like 20 to 30% of the youth nowadays considers themselves some form of LGBTQ.
Yeah, here's an issue though. There's a lot of problems with early medicalization for trans-identified youth, and this was sort of interesting. Recently, a mom reached out to me and hipped me to a talk that was given by Dr. Marcy Bowers at Duke University, who is trans and has performed some 2,000 trans surgeries. And
trans doctor performing the trans surgeries.
Right.
Okay.
And has performed these surgeries on young people, has also prescribed the puberty blocking drugs, the Lupron, as well as the cross-sex hormones. If a child goes on puberty blockers and then goes directly onto cross-sex hormones and does not go through natural puberty, they will never orgasm. Yep. They will never have full sexual function.
Or the emotional.
Aspect. Additionally, if you're a little boy and you go on a puberty blocker and then you start taking estrogen, you will never have enough genital material to be converted into the wound that is then referred to as the neovagina. That will also not work. Additionally, if you are a young person and you start taking cross-sex hormones, you are going to have substantial problems with bone density. So the odds that blood coagulation, all of these things. So the odds that you're going to be able to play sports are remarkably small, because you're just not going to have the physical capability to do that. So if a young man doesn't go through natural puberty, he's not going to be able to play against Megan Rapinoe.
Anyone who does that to a child belongs in jail.
I agree
I think
with
the
you.
one
that's happening in how many states now?
It's what is it? Florida. I think
Iowa, maybe.
Florida. There was Iowa.
Was it Oklahoma?
Texas, I know. Yeah. There's a couple of states where it's illegal.
Texas
to
announced
do it.
they'll take the kids from the parents.
Right, and then they actually ended up investigating. It was Ken Paxton's office, and it was actually inspired by Libs of TikTok, which Libs of TikTok, I talked to her about it, and she was like, that was amazing. Like, I actually helped, But what was interesting is the Attorney General's office then found themselves investigating a parent who worked at Texas Social Services for medically transitioning their child.
I think one of the great lies, one of the big lies among trans activists, obviously beyond that men can actually become women and women can actually become men, is that these puberty blockers have no consequences and that we have fully studied their unintended consequences. We're right now giving puberty blockers that were supposed to be used to treat, I forgot what exact hormonal diseases, but we don't fully understand what these puberty blockers do when used in the case of gender dysphoria in children. It's not completely reversible.
There haven't been studies. And it's not completely reversible at all. There's not any reason to believe that it's reversible. There's
Yeah, but this is the argument made to allow,
because also,
to walk that back.
once a child goes on those puberty Lupron, right, which is supposed to address precocious puberty, and then you take the child off. But in cases of healthy children, you go on it, they put you on it, and then you transition to cross-sex hormones. So you don't, and most kids who go on the puberty blockers do go on to take the cross-sex hormones because they're already believing it. So it's not a pause button. It's an initiation.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is, you can't exactly tell when somebody is going on hormone blockers, so it's hard to visibly see how many people are doing it. But what I do see as somebody who's from New York City, Brooklyn specifically, one of the most trans parts of the city, is that double mastectomies are relatively common. This isn't something that like you don't see or hear about from friends or see.
You see it a
people.
bit.
Yeah, it's relatively common. And I think that too, convincing women that the right move, or whatever you're dealing with, interpersonal, women deal with a lot of issues mentally, going through puberty, etc. But to convince them to get double mastectomies, to remove their breasts, again, I think is comparable to modern day lobotomies.
Yeah,
And not just
also
women, girls. I mean, it happens
Children.
to people who are underage. It happens to girls.
I want to.
Just
Kids.
if I may, just one thing. They talk about how they tell kids, if you're not comfortable in your own body, then perhaps you're trans. And I think it's important for people to realize that it's not really that normal to be comfortable in your own body. Like, bodies are super uncomfortable.
Especially
That's a
during
good point.
puberty.
And especially during puberty.
Especially during
Puberty sucks for everybody. Like, it feels weird and yucky to have your body change. I know personally, like, I was 18 before I realized that I should wear a bra, and it was my college roommate who was like, "You really need to do this," and I was like, "Ew, gross! I don't really want to be involved in this." Oh, you guys are all embarrassed. That's really cute.
I mean, I never realized to wear a
But
bra.
I was
They never told me
horrified.
to.
I was
didn't know 18-year-olds were supposed to.
I was horrified by being a grown woman. I was like, this is really uncomfortable.
For men, it's called the bro.
Right.
bro?
You got to
Is that
wear
a
it
thing?
when you're like
Right,
50.
right. Isn't that didn't Kramer do that on Seinfeld?
It was
He had,
no,
like,
it was
a whole-
George's dad.
That's right. That's right.
No, he wanted the manzier. I
the
think.
manzier, but he had teamed up with Kramer.
Kramer wanted the bro.
That's right. Yeah.
He's like, no,
That's
and they
right.
were arguing about it. The
What's
bro.
the deal?
The bro. So let's throw it back to eugenics in the early 1900s. When we had Matt Binder on the show.
I like that segue.
Well, it's because it's the idea that progressives aren't always right. They
Yeah.
think they are. They think they always win, but it's not true. Seamus made a good point. He said every instance in U.S. history where someone has tried to deny personhood to another group of people, they've always lost.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that, right?
Yeah, and no group of people who has ever made the distinction between human and person and said it's technically a human but not a person has ever been on the right side of history when we examine
Right.
the situation later.
So you look back at eugenics, and we've done away with that. It's like a bad idea. Nobody likes that. Yet the tenets of it still exist. Like when we had Matt Binder on the show, he was saying he kept saying over and over again, if a baby was born with deformity or abnormality, you wouldn't be in favor of ending its life. And I'm like, no. And he was like shocked by that. And I'm like, I'm not into eugenics.
Right.
Like if a human being is born different, we want it to try and live.
What an ableist view that is. That you should abort
it's crazy, but
disabled children.
Here's the issue. Genetic diversity is important to the health of any species. This is basic science. It's observable. If we start saying these traits are undesirable, where does it end? And I'm not going to, slippery slope. No, quite literally you have parents being like, he's got a heart issue, perhaps. And they're going to look at the DNA and they're going to say, when he's in his 30s, he may experience this, so why don't you try again? They'll go, okay. And then you're going to move the needle more and more until at what point are you arguing that it's just designer babies? And at what point do you end up with a disease that primarily affects people with a specific gene, or specific cell receptor, and then all of a sudden it's like we didn't realize that homogenizing the gene pool was going to result in population collapse, but here we are. So I'm just like, you don't do that.
Also, well, Tim, I mean, the left has actually disproven the slippery slope. They showed us it's actually just a cliff. I mean, you go right over instantly.
We mentioned
just falling.
aborting for whatever disabilities. I'm trying to look up the exact source because I remember this in the past, but what I'm reading right now from The Atlantic is that in Denmark, they actually do tests to see if the child does have Down syndrome.
Yep.
And according
Iceland,
to what I'm
too.
reading, it says nearly all expecting mothers choose to take the test. Of those who get a Down syndrome diagnosis, more than 95% choose to abort.
That's
so this
right.
isn't
Eugenics.
just some fantasy
They've
tale,
eliminated it
you
in
know,
Iceland.
scenario that we're
In
talking about.
Iceland
This
as
is
well.
actually
Yeah.
happening.
The thing too is like
Eugenics.
you get to
Yeah.
decide, right? Like they have all of these because I was older when I had my son. I was like 35 when I was pregnant, and there's all these tests that they can give you that give you like, you know, if he's gonna have whatever. There's something about X's. I don't really know, but there were a ton of them, and they were like, oh, you need to take this and this and this, and I was like, why? And they were like, you know, because it'll tell you if your child has a deformity, and I was like, I'm good.
Don't care.
I don't need any of that.
Right.
I think there is an
I'm
argument
cool
to
with
be
it,
made
you know.
about, I'm not saying abort children who have Down syndrome, but there is some version of a quality of life argument. But I do think the argument starts to become is where do you draw the line to where you abort a child? I'm not saying it's okay or not okay for Down syndrome, but, you know, if we keep moving the needle or the line, it's like, well, if your kid has diabetes, you know, do we potentially want to abort him because
What
of
if
that?
they're short?
Yeah. Yeah.
What if they're short?
What if they're going to have male pattern baldness? You know,
I hear
Real
like
questions.
2 out of 5 men do.
right?
Yeah.
According to like a Roman ad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Just
would be
don't
the
kill any of
end,
them ever.
the end of so many great and very important people.
That's right.
Right?
When all the parents would have to do is bestow a beanie upon them.
Exactly. That's exactly.
So
I gotta say, I like a beanie. So.
Lydia pulled up the story where it talks about what is this Prader-Willi syndrome, and it says studies have found its positive results are incorrect more than 90% of the time.
Yes,
Insanely
yes,
high
yes.
numbers.
I read about this. I think
Yeah.
we wrote about this a while back, and it is absolutely insane because the genetic testing is not always correct.
You want to talk about the
100%.
death penalty being wrong? What, 25% of the time? I want to talk about this test and why people.
I'm
abort
against
their
all of
babies.
it. I'm against
Also-
abortion. I'm against the death penalty.
Yep.
I'm against
There you go.
euthanasia.
Yeah.
I'm
But
against all of it.
This is an important point. Like when we're talking about the death penalty, there's an argument to be made. All right, well, like 75% of the time or whatever, that person's guilty, whether you agree with the death penalty or not, if the number is 25%. But whether a child has Down syndrome or not, they're innocent. It's wrong to kill them. So when
That's
people are
crazy.
horrified because they go, oh my gosh, all these children died who didn't even have the disease that I think it's okay to kill people with, they're getting it backwards. You just should not kill unborn children.
Yes.
When we were talking with Matt, it was just man, it was kind of crazy when he was like, you said you would stand with those who wanted to ban abortion, and I was like, I said if my option was you who wants to legalize elective abortion at 9 months or standing with the people who would ban it, I will stand with the people who will ban it.
That's how. Yeah, I
because
landed there
that
too.
reduces the amount of death.
Yes.
But he didn't understand, and he was like, "You just want to ban abortion." It's like, no,
Well, but that's
I want
what they're
less
told.
people to
That's
die.
what they tell themselves they have to say.
Tim, it has to be, for a lot of the way some people view you, it has to be that black and white. That's why you have to be right wing in that dude's eyes.
It's so
That's,
it's,
you know.
But it was funny because it was like a progressive and a liberal arguing over abortion, and the people who are watching who are conservative are like, these people are far left.
Everybody's insane.
I know, right? I'm pro-choice, and he was like, I asked him, and he said that he thought the woman can choose to abort the baby at 9 months, and I'm like, that's not. You just deliver it. Like
The people in
what
the
are you
middle
talking-
always also get called the opposite of whatever side. So, for example, like if you're a 14-weeker, pro-lifers are calling you pro-choice, but pro-choicers are calling a 14-weeker relatively pro-life.
Oh, yeah.
Do they say
Yeah,
that?
definitely.
Right wing.
100%, yeah.
Like,
if
I mean,
you're
come on,
not
you saw
up
it.
until 9 months, then
Look at
you're
the
essentially pro-life.
Look at the conversation we
eyes.
had with Matt.
Yeah, I mean, but I think like pro-life and pro-choice is a dichotomy, right? Like you're either in favor of legal abortion or you're against it. I realize that there are
Right.
some people who are in favor of it at different stages or against it at different stages, but like ultimately it's a binary. Like you're either okay with abortion or you're not.
That's why at Timcast.com we say pro-abortion or anti-abortion.
Yes,
Yeah.
I like
Because
that.
pro-choice and pro-life are just stupid buzzwords.
It's
that don't mean-
it's rhetoric.
like Matt says he's pro-choice, but not for men. So it's like
What do you mean he's not pro-choice for men?
women have the right to make a financial decision to kill a baby, but a man doesn't have a right to choose to abandon the baby. So if a woman is pregnant and she says, I can't afford this, she can terminate the pregnancy. It's her body, it's her choice. The man could also be broke, but he can't say, I would like to be, removed from financial responsibility and choose not to have a child.
So basically, he's infantilizing women.
Oh yeah, of course.
I mean, that's typically what the left does. They say that women aren't responsible for their choices. You're not responsible for having sex with somebody if you had too much to drink. That's on the man, even if the man had just as much to drink or
do you remember
more.
that poster?
Which one?
There was a poster that went up at school that went viral several years ago where it was like, have you both had too much to drink? Well, you're raping her.
That's right.
It's like, well, you're
remember that.
both drunk.
Seems
Like
fair.
You're both trashed,
Yeah,
bro.
it's all right.
Like,
especially, I think in Illinois.
But I think
this-
that's infantilizing.
In Illinois, the statute is that rape is specifically male on female, and women can't rape. Like, I don't think there's no law for it.
I mean, I guess women can rape. It's hard to imagine.
No, it happens.
It happens.
I mean, there was the story of that guy in the store where the woman force-fed him Viagra or something.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will
But-
say generally it is harder for a woman to rape a man, but it definitely does happen.
does
and sexually assault from
But you guys-
women
There's
happen
actually-
towards
Like,
men.
like,
Stop,
given
stop,
their
stop.
definitions.
Guys, you're oversimplifying this. A guy can be sexually attracted to a woman and have a girlfriend and be like, I can't do this, and then she can still coerce him or force him. She can lean in his ear and say, I'll accuse you of doing something. I'll claim you hit me. She can spike his drink. There's a whole bunch of stuff women
There's
can do to
also
rape guys.
been I think substantial number of cases where a female teacher has raped a
So
male
bad.
student.
So many cases.
Right.
You know, like if a male student is 15, you don't have a ton of control over your whole situation, and your teacher is, 28 or 30 or whatever.
I think the revelation
that has
here
certainly
is
happened.
that
I was just reading an article about that today.
I think the real epiphany for all of us here is that women are obviously the real perpetrators the whole time.
Yeah.
Wow.
There you go. I knew that all along.
Or perhaps equality means that everyone is responsible for their own decisions and the outcomes and consequences of
Well,
those decisions.
When you talk to a
Maybe I
progressive,
read too much Camille Paglia. I don't know.
Oh my
when you
goodness.
talk to a progressive about abortion, they say, "Well, the man made his choice. He could have chosen not to have sex," and it's like, but not the woman, huh?
I've heard someone say that before. I once heard someone say that you can choose not to have sex in order to not get pregnant. Like this is they just I've said this before. At some point, left wingers just end up making right wing arguments, but in really inconsistent ways.
Right. That's what was confusing to me. I was like, I don't understand what your position is. Like, what are you opposed to and what do you support? And it's just you get these empty buzzwords. It's her decision. It's her choice. No matter how many times me and Seamus were basically talking about the baby's body. What if the baby's a girl? Is it her choice? Matt's answer was, it's the woman's choice. And it's like, the baby is alive and being born. It's the woman's choice. Like, but he's like, it's her body. It's like, but what about the baby's body? It's like, it just right over the head.
Yeah.
There's no argument. If you can't argue with someone who doesn't understand what you're talking about,
Makes it hard, yeah.
Yep.
Well, I think we did have a very productive conversation with Jamie yesterday, and one point he made, and again, like, I mean, I very much enjoyed it. And by the way, I'll say this, and we appreciated, Matt coming on and being willing to have a conversation with us. And, I mentioned it was mostly with Tim. There was a couple moments I felt a need to interject. I didn't want it to be on two on one. There were a few times where I was like, all right, I have to jump in here because this is like blatantly incorrect and I need to say something. But what I really appreciated about Jamie is he clearly disagreed with me on the pro-life issue, but I felt as if his questions were very much in good faith and he was sort of curious about the perspective. And he said something which was, we're not really going to get anywhere with the dialogue if people don't have faith that they can reason with the person they're talking to and they don't have some basic empathy and understanding for the other position.
People on the left.
It's like by the way, I just want to say, empathy for it doesn't mean it's a good position, and I agree with it. Like I think it's completely abhorrent to believe in abortion, but also at the same time, I think a lot of people believe in it because they just don't understand the issue that well.
How can you have a coherent political discussion with people who believe Jussie Smollett? You can't.
Yeah, that
You
makes
can't
it
do it.
tough.
Like Taylor Lorenz can write every article in the world and people just they stare at it with drool coming out of their mouths, and it's like, maybe this person can't understand arguments.
It's so funny that you just mentioned Jussie Smollett because I just pulled up a post-millennial article saying, flashback, Dr. Oz pushed Jussie Smollett hate crime.
Yeah, that's
Is that
right,
true?
'cause-
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly
Well,
right.
I mean, to be fair, we all pushed it. We all came out the next day and released our public statements, didn't we?
We'll see if Dr. Oz ends up coming on top of it.
Dr. Oz also was transing kids and was pro-abortion
And that- and
prior
we
to
couldn't get
10 minutes ago.
We couldn't get Sean Parnell?
I know, right?
Man.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Have they called it for who's going to win that?
I don't know yet.
It doesn't matter.
McCormick versus Oz.
I don't think they called it yet, but I wanted to mention something about Dr. Oz.
Fetterman?
I covered the Pennsylvania rally. I was asking people, is Dr. Oz America first? Most people said no. One person that I spoke to said Dr. Oz is the kind of guy who's supported by like Oprah Winfrey, and like that's why he doesn't like him. And then I responded to him, like Trump also supports him, and Oprah originally supported Trump too. Like I'm old enough to remember when Oprah Winfrey supported Trump's initially when Trump started running.
Wasn't Hannity like the Trump whisperer for Oz? It was so it was so weird to so many people why Oz got that endorsement.
It's interesting. We're seeing like this celebrification. I don't know if we're seeing it more. I'm just paying more attention. But there was Trump originally. There's Dr. Oz. There's also, I forgot, the superstar football player, college football player in Georgia who's running for Senate.
I don't remember either.
He has the gay son who's a conservative activist too. Walker.
Herschel
Walker. Yeah.
Okay.
He's running for Senate, I believe, too, in Georgia. So it's interesting that we're seeing the celebrification, more celebrities throwing their hands in the races
Although we
and coming
saw
out on
that
top.
we saw that with Ronald Reagan. I mean, he was a famous Hollywood actor.
Yeah.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.